Hello everyone, and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. My name is Andrew Knight and I've been with RICS for near on 12 years now. I sit within our knowledge and practice part of the organisation, and my role is to look at the impact of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. And with over 110,000 members working right across the life cycle of property and land, really all the way from land, planning and development, construction, brokerage, operations, finance, end of life, maintenance. It's a really huge, broad canvas upon which our members work, and clearly data and technology now has an increasingly important role to play. And in addition, we work across a whole host of asset types, whether it's land itself, residential, commercial, alternative and infrastructure. So an incredibly important area to look at how data and technology can help us bring better outcomes for clients of the profession and society at large. And today I'm really glad to have John from SymTerra joining me. So John, please do join me on the call.
Hi Andrew, thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure, welcome John. And before we get into the kind of bits and bytes, it's always nice to have a bit of a human element. So it'd be great to hear a bit about your backstory and sort of the catalyst for launching SymTerra.
Yeah, so my backstory is I'm a mechanical engineer. So I'm chartered from IMechE, just next door to RICS in London. And I started my career in tube lines, now TfL, where I was a graduate engineer, and started on rolling stock and worked into the delivery teams on construction projects. So coming from mechanical engineering, knew nothing about construction, didn't know anything what was rebar or unistrut, but I learned very, very quickly. So I spent a lot of my time in rail construction, and then kind of working into kind of mega projects over time and stuff like. So I've had quite a wide range of projects, from rail delivery, high-rise buildings, factories, and then into tunneling projects then kind of throughout kind of a 15-year kind of career within it. So it's been quite an exciting journey for me, and be able to see quite a lot of the most amazing projects that have been built in the UK over the last decade and a half.
And what was the genesis of starting SymTerra? What was that kind of catalyst?
So in our previous lives, I'm one of the co-founders of SymTerra. Sarah is the other co-founder within the business. And in our previous lives, we both worked in construction. You know, Sarah's come from Mace and other kind of companies, mostly in the healthcare environment. And no matter how big or technical the construction projects were, we've always found that ourselves managing the projects in Excel and WhatsApp, emails, etc. And that's been always kind of a struggle with us to do things. So the minimal amount of construction tech that we did have, and what we did have access to, didn't always benefit us and was always a hassle to use. And we'd typically go off and make decisions based on incorrect, out-of-date information, or even no information at all, and kind of a gut feeling as to what's best. This typically kind of ends up that we end up having to rework, we have to stop work, we have to redo things, and that creates a lot of inefficiencies within the business. And what we kind of saw was that poor communication from site can have a very detrimental effect on the project. And yet we were unable to go off and we're also unable to kind of, communicate with our subcontractors as well along the way. And we've just kind of noticed this gap in the market, that there is just this missing piece of the puzzle of what's happening on site, that we can actually benefit not just the project manager, but also the engineering, the quantity surveyor, the scheduling team, and so on. So everybody knows, did the concrete pour happen on time? Did we finish the facade works? Was the electrical first fix finished so that we can bring in the next subcontractor next week? So all of that was getting the minimum amount of technical information across to every single party in a hassle-free, simple to use, open type format. And that was kind of the basis of where we started, I suppose, really within kind of construction and stuff like, and why we set up SymTerra.
And so what does the technology do in essence to overcome and, as you say, fill this gap in terms of this information management?
So we started with I suppose, a big list of our own problems that we've had across all our projects, and we went down to what was the kind of the root cause of it and where was it. We noticed that there were some basic parts of data format, where it was located systems wise, who had access to those systems. We mapped out a lot of projects that we'd worked on and be able to see what were the kind of key components that were blocking. And part of that was, it was too expensive to use, it was too complex to use. We had to have a specialist to use a certain piece of equipment, and only that person could ever turn that piece of software on. they were doing competent person to access, retrieve. And we're talking about things like scheduling tools, we're talking about BIM models. You know, there is a level of competency and expertise that is needed for these very, very important systems. But the base information, the things that basically people like myself, project managers or engineering managers need, is just give me a progress, give me an update on these things. So we got to that part. We also identified then the kind of the area of, you know, it's for the benefit of the project, this information we're recording. So we're recording what's happening on the ground, recording progress, recording issues, and so on. And those are meant to be shared with everybody else. And what we've seen in the last decade is the slow rise of, you know, we started with text messages on site, and it was one text message sent it to 20 people and it cost you 10p a text message, but it was worth it. But you couldn't reply to everybody on the same text message. Then we had, you know, BBM on the Blackberries for those that were BBM fans like myself. And then we eventually replaced all that with WhatsApp. And now we've got these massive WhatsApp groups with big projects. And the problem with that is whilst it's great for sharing, whilst it's got a lower entry for information, sharing across the teams, and you can share videos and photographs, etc., it's not stored in the information management system. So you've got projects with ISO 9000 suite of stuff and compliance and IMS systems and all the rest of it. But there's nothing that captures what's happening with WhatsApp. And then I have to go back into WhatsApp at the end of the week if I'm diligent and copy the photographs and text out, put that into a Word document and then put it into the system. But I'm not always going to do that, I'm going to be honest. And everybody else is going to have the same thing. So we ended up with this kind of piece of, we're kind of need to build WhatsApp for construction, but have it in a way that ties in with an information management system, being able to link with other parts of the built environment. Has been quite a key part of it, like to go off and bring that together. So we link in with scheduling, we link in with the BIM model, we link in with a GIS type system. We bring all this together so that you have one bucket of information around your project, your audit trail of what's going on. And from a point of view of construction management, that has been the biggest missing component, definitely in our projects, is what's happening now, what's happened last week and what's happened in the last 6 months. And at commissioning and handover, you have a robust audit trail of your project so that you can kind of easily hand over your project by having a very, very robust commissioning plan in place with the audit trail to back up every single part of that. And that is the essence of where we're kind of going within it.
And given you and Sarah's background and the progress you've made so far, what are your plans for the next couple of years? Because obviously, to some extent, it's a continually moving target, and you probably get feedback from the market with your own experience about other functionality you can build. What does the roadmap look like?
So the basic part of the roadmap is that we're on a journey to go off and build out a kind of a construction management toolkit. And there's going to be plenty of software out there, some fantastic solutions in place, and there's some coming up. But you have to have the right tool to do the job at the point of time. We're very much aiming at the construction management software area. We want to go off and work through a roadmap of what we've got our own list of problems that we've had and key things that we want to hit as a business, but also with our clients who we see as partners on this journey as to what's really their pain points within their space and being able to go off and support their needs as well as our roadmap and hopefully kind of bring them together into kind of one place. One of the core essence of what we're doing is we're trying to build one system that is industry agnostic, that allows you to use SymTerra for what you need as a business. And we're seeing that across all of our clients at the moment. It's fantastic to see everybody using the same app, but for very vastly different purposes across different sectors within the construction space. And that's been kind of quite part of the basic roadmap of what we're trying to go off and do. So we're building out the functions. We start from site, capture what's happening on the ground. We're, as one person kind of described as, we're bottom-up BIM. So we start from the construction site. We link back to your digital twins, your scheduling, your progress. We get your reports. It then goes back towards the office. And a lot of software is top-down software, where it's designed for office-based people with a computer, with a desk and keyboard. It's not designed. The afterthought then is the mobile app, which is an afterthought of just give it to them and the people on the ground will do it. it shouldn't be that case. You know, we need to go off and incorporate better design, better approach to the ground, because you get that right, you capture better information. And if you capture information in the right format and structure, then you could use that then for 55 other things later on. And that's the kind of the essence of where we're doing. We're not looking at the point of time now of replacing paperwork in construction. It is about replacing paperwork today, but what are we going to need that information for the end of the week? The month-end reports, the board papers, how we're going to make better decisions. This is the core essence of where we're going. And when we get into asset management, we're then looking at where our data is going to be in 100 years' time. Somebody, your great-great-grandkids, are going to be looking at this and going, what were they on about at the time? I can't read this format. Or they've got it in SymTerra, where it's in a system agnostic format that can be used then forever, and be able to use the base then for better decision making later on.
Indeed. Now, John, many of our tech partners on this program are in various stages of startup. Now, you know, particularly in your space, in that construction technology contech arena, what advice would you share to other kind of founders or future founders who are looking to kind of start in the way you've done?
Is this the bit where I say something more positive and don't do it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of hoping.
I think there's actually, I think a couple of years ago I would have said definitely one part, but there's another part of this, which is there's so many great construction companies now that are waking up to the need for a data-centric approach to business, that I really am hoping to see the rise of a digital guru, you know, a leader within that space, within the construction companies, and that can come from any one of the many different kind of organizations. And I go back to RICS, IC, IMECI on the same street, you know, as well as many, many more. Those spaces is a data-centric approach. It's not just kind of a digital approach of we've got digital technology, we have innovation. It should be data-centric. And I think before you think about this journey, look at the space and who you're working with within your business, and seeing how you can further that career path within your organization, but also within the kind of the specialization you're in. Like, so if you're a surveyor, how can you go off and leverage that further to go off and do something even better within the industry, become a leader in that sense? If you're insisting on leaving the comforts of a good job and all the rest of it, and the industry does need a lot of great people in there, I think it's understanding the problem, to develop that as far as you possibly can without, you know, kind of taking the leap. Understand the kind of the tech stacks that are involved in it. How can you do this on a shoestring, or do you need to go off and have physical infrastructure in place for it, and so on? So if it's a robotics, 3D printing type solution, and work out the business plan and seeing if that kind of stacks up. There's also kind of a part of, in the tech founder world, you are typically entering into getting VC funding. And I think it is kind of, you know, looking at angels at the very beginning. There's some fantastic organizations out there from that side of things who are more industry specialists, understand the space a lot better. Also, then there's some great VC companies in place, like, who are in this space as well and understand it. But some generalists are also trying to get into the whole tech, disruptive tech environment. And it's understanding them, talking with them, and kind of getting a feel for what they're looking for. And we have seen changes in the market as to what they're looking for. They're looking for more value add products now, which is fantastic. There's a better understanding that construction is slower to adopt, but it is worthwhile in the long term, because, you know, we don't pump out 10 buildings a day, we pump out one every 2 years, you know, for one project. So it is a different beast, and that's being better understood, which is fantastic to see. But I think once you understand to how you want to communicate your product and the startup to the VC, where you're pitching yourself, what is the attractiveness to it for the VC audience, is slightly different to the construction audience, which is a bit of a weird one. And it's definitely one that we thought it was very much construction, but we learned to speak VC, I think, along the journey. It is a different language to me. I'll be honest, I struggled. I'm definitely a lot better with it now, thanks to the help of some fantastic VCs here in London. But it was very important to understand that what we thought was the attractiveness of our business and our product and the unmet need that we're doing in construction wasn't always what the VCs were listening out for. There's key words they're looking for within this space, and they're kind of going, if you don't hit those, even if you are saying them indirectly, you miss the opportunity to work with some good companies. And that's kind of, you know, part of the journey for us, and that's kind of what we've always kind of shared with other startups who are looking to come into the space.
So talking about that journey world, I mean, you obviously, you and Sarah would have had a vision at the start. How has that vision evolved, either through challenge or just necessity, or your awareness of how you perhaps need to develop the organization?
I think on, I think we've developed. We started with two of us and a dog for a start in a spare room. So that was during the pandemic. So that was interesting to work together as a husband and wife team. And we kind of go forward to now where we are, about 15 people with, you know, a whole floor here in the design district in Greenwich in London. And I think as we started with one client and moved forward on that one and developed the product with Thames Water, it was fantastic, and it definitely challenged what we're doing and what we're getting right and what we're getting wrong. And you know, there was features that I thought were just, this is going to be the bones of it, like this is going to be the whole essence of it. And actually, people didn't care about my opinion on this matter, and you know, my ego took a bit of a hit, and we had to rejig around to what was the what I thought was the essence was just the manifestation of what was actually behind the core issue of it. And so we changed, we moved things around, we optimized it around our clients. But the core essence of it has always been to record the base information so we can use it in any format. So changing the structure of how our app or software looks wasn't an issue, so it's easier to move around. But if we didn't have a basic understanding as to what our data is going to be used for by our clients now, next week, and in the future, then that was going to be a major restructuring, a big issue. So I think that base understanding saved us, but it did not mean that we did not have to reformat and re-go out. We're launching some new fantastic features this month to new clients, and that is a lot of that is based on feedback from our existing clients of this works, that doesn't work, can we have more of this, less of that? And that's been quite a important part of our journey, is that we don't have all the answers despite 25 years experience, and that has been, I suppose, the kind of the essence of how we're moving forward. And that partnership has been quite critical for us, that feedback loop, to make sure that we are really understanding of what we're serving and stuff. You know, we now have a portfolio of like over 100 companies since we launched freemium in September. We cover £5 billion of work across industry-leading organisations like Thames Water, MTR, Transport for London, Network Rail, Kier. The list kind of scares me, as well as kind of gives me an idea as to how well we're doing, and that's been fantastic. And there's been some brilliant people who are, and this is where I go back to who's in the industry, and there's people who are fantastically engaged, understand what they need, are very clear with communicating those, and that enables us to build better tech. And because we're listening, and this is key for any founder, is to listen to your customers, listen to the feedback, understand what is real and what is wish list items or bells and whistles that may never be used. And I think that's always going to be a very difficult part of the journey. But that, along with the roadmap and building out the construction management system, is we're going to be continually moving and shifting and learning as we're going on. And it's very, very exciting to go off and be part of this kind of scene at the moment.
So, I mean, you mentioned that challenge of, as you put it, learning to speak VC, and I guess almost a challenge perhaps around having the humility to realise that actually the feedback from the market actually should shape the direction in perhaps a different way than you envisaged. But aside from those two, is there any other challenge that sort of stands out for you in these first few years of building the business?
Yeah, I think like if we put the VC stuff to the side, and the basic fact of working 7 days a week, and a lot of, you know, I don't think I've eaten this much Weetabix in my life as a main meal before, which is not a great thing to be saying. But it's, you know, it should not be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But it has been, you know, I suppose quite difficult in the sense of understanding that whilst we are forward thinking in terms of technology and use of it and data-centric environment, and, you know, same as yourself, a lot of people in the industry are not. A lot of people have, and there's a bit of a problem within, we've got a lot of people promising, and a lot of articles across many things of this technology is taking over, we've got flying robots and it's going to save everything else. And then we got the digitally underserved companies out there. And the bigger companies can afford this stuff and they can try these things, do some amazing projects and really push the boundary. But when you talk to the smaller players who we're more serving, their expectations are much higher because they're reading these things without understanding where their starting point is. So we're starting with, the basis of very basic kind of digital adoption, and they're wanting effectively what would be an enterprise grade system in the big players. And I think that bringing these clients on board this digital journey of let's get the basics right, let's get your basic structure in place, let's get an understanding as to where you are on your journey and where you're going forward. That has been the essence of I suppose a lot of our discussions. And I think that was blind side for us, is that we had again made assumptions that once we're going to have people on a digital journey, they want to talk to us about digital and they want to talk to us about using SymTerra, then great, we're on the home straight. But actually there is a journey to bring a lot of our clients on, and the first part is understanding getting the basics right. The second part, when they start generating a volume of data, what can you do with this? And that's another part of the education piece and the knowledge share that we're doing with our clients, is that we're working with them to understand how to capture, how to get the basics right. And then what have you got and how you can leverage this is another part of the journey. And that is it's an exciting part for us because we get to see a wide range of different clients and what they're doing. We get to give them a better understanding of their risk profile, looking at trend analysis, looking at seeing what's happening, where it's happening, and how they can better optimize their business to reduce risk, to improve safety, as well as efficiencies and margins. We are entering into a recession coming forward in 2023, increased risks, a lot of pressure on labor and materials. It is very important to understand where you are going as a business, and that can be used with some data. And we're kind of working really closely with our clients to go off and do that. We've got Garrett as our operations manager, who's helping our clients along that journey. He comes from the industry, NEBOSH trained. So we've got a very good guy in there that's bringing on the usership, and then we're bringing on our data-centric people like myself and some other kind of people on the team who are helping leverage that data to show clients, you've got this, and now look at the value we can go up and offer to you going forward. And that's, I think that's probably one of the most exciting things I've got coming forward in 2023, is whilst it's a challenge, and it frustrates me sometimes, honestly, it is still, when they come through for you, and you see that usage and that adoption and that benefits that business, then that's fantastic to go off and see.
Indeed. Now, John, you mentioned safety in that last conversation piece, and I know we're looking forward now to 2023. What do you think the impact of the Building Safety Act will be on the industry, and dare I say, is it ready for it? Is it prepared?
I think the industry is quite fragmented in that sense right now. I think we have not felt the impact of the Building Safety Act right now. It came out in April 2022, and we still haven't got all the second legislation. We haven't got the guidance in place, and also we haven't been to court with it. And typically within UK law, it has to go to court. We have to go on case law, and I think we're going to see this going up for the next decade plus. And when you look at previous types of the the Building Safety Act that kind of came up before, which like the subsurface regulations for railway in '89, I think, that had repercussions that lasted many years. It had much impact. It had a wide range kind of thing. And I think we're going to go off and see that kind of going forward. I mean, one of the key ones for us is look at the building regulations. At the moment, I think there's nearly 500 standards referred to in the building regs. And if I'm a small company, I can't download all 500 of those at £200 a piece. I'll bankrupt my company. So the simplification of that needs to be in place. It needs to be kind of better adoption, better kind of integration of technology and access to data and bits and pieces. But I think it's going to be something that we're going to see the industry kind of coming forward for it in the coming years. And I think sadly we're going to see there'll be companies that'll be around in 2030, and there's companies that are not going to be around in 2030. And I think there's not a need to scaremonger. I think it's at the very essence of the Building Safety Act, the very core part of it is quality management and a robust audit trail. You don't need anything fancy for this. You can just get away with Dropbox and an Excel spreadsheet to track what documents, when they were, bits and pieces. I think a lot of parties are going to have bigger roles to play, which they should have already kind of covered in the first place. Surveyors is going to have a significant change. I feel sorry for them. It's such a moving landscape at the moment. You know, doing any tendering or estimations at the moment, it's just critical to have those kind of information in place. And then going into engineering, product management, and then project management, construction management to deliver the works, keep that in commissioning, because at the end of the day, we will eventually hear about a court case of a building not being handed over, going to the High Court because the client refused to hand over, big dispute, and the basic essence is going to be the completion certification process, because a duty holder is going to be the person who's going to end up in jail if things are not done right. It's not the construction company. So the construction company is incentivized to get the building completion certificate as quickly as possible for various reasons. And a duty holder has got a position of, I need to protect myself legally as a person, because if I don't, this, you know, signing this off could land me in court. So this is going to start coming up as being an issue, you know, in the next couple of years. And the company that is caught out without a good quality management system in place and an audit trail is going to be the one unable to hand over a building, and therefore could be going to liquidation, going to court. You know, we could have a number of issues within that. And I also predict that the Building Safety Act in time is going to become applicable to all buildings with public spaces. So think about a shopping mall, schools, hotels, etc., and not just high rise with a resident with two or more residential units. So it's going to become more applicable. And I think the companies that adopt a standard of good quality management, good audit trail, I think we'll be fine and stuff. I think they will be the ones that will be winning more business. They'll be the ones that when I'm tendering and I've got 5 on the short list, who's got the good QMS and the IMS and everything else in place, they're the ones who will be winning. We're going to put more onus on the technical aspect of it and not just the pricing side of things.
Indeed. And given obviously that data and tech will be part of the solution to this, and you've already touched on issues around perhaps smaller firms having over expectations of what tech can do, what do you think the barriers will be to actually using tech? And as you said, sometimes it won't need to be incredibly sophisticated to fulfill this kind of need, but there'll need to be some kind of digital role here, won't there?
Yeah, I think it sadly starts at the very, very boring part. So if anyone wants to fast forward for this part, feel free to do so. I'm not going to talk about robots or 3D printing. The very basic essence is understanding what is going to be your information management strategy for your business. And this is going to be how we capture it, what's our security behind it, how are we going to go and share it with our clients. The BSA requires you to share information with clients and their bits and pieces. Data ownership, and how you're going to go off and share that internally and leverage that to make better informed decisions. And this isn't just something that you give to the IT department and they manage it and you crack on with doing your core business. This is a kind of a C-suite decision. This is down to the business as a whole to understand what is are you going to become data centric? Are you going to adopt that across your business so that when you're making decisions, you can see that across the whole business? You can leverage that across multiple projects. So typically we'll do 20 projects in the year, 20 project managers, 20 SharePoint sites, or 20 data buckets owned by the clients, and then we do something internally. Why aren't we sharing across? Why can't I use the same information across the whole thing? Why can't I use show me an example the last time we did a tandem lift for air handling units on top of a high-rise building. Then I can use that then in tendering later on. I can, access information, I can move this around. And also then, how do we store information? It's going to be 30 years under the BSA. I would recommend all companies to adopt that now. Storage is quite cheap. But also the other part is, where am I storing? Because you've got cloud services now, I've now got my stuff stuck in the cloud. But do I own that information? What happens when that company, I change it, they change their offering, whatever's happening in the future, in 10, 20 years, how do I own that information? And then if I no longer use that software, how can I access that with other software? Is it a bespoke system that I can only use X to open it, and therefore every time I want to open that single file, I have to pay $2,000, euros, sterling a month to access it, and then find somebody who can use it for me? Or Is it a data lake type environment that I have access to it and then I can tie it in with Tableau, Power BI, other systems, or merge with other bits and pieces? And that's kind of going to be a very tough, very difficult journey for people to understand, because we have legacy systems in place that are not very open. They're very much silos, and they're locking data in their own environment, which I think is just not the way forward for anybody to do this in the environment. I think it's not legal anyway for a start with the BSA. So I think a lot of construction software companies are going to be at risk of non-compliance with the BSA in that regard as a secondary body involved. And we're going to see the movement of, actually, we need to own our own data. We spend so much money and time capturing reports on the ground, and you're out there with doing a report on a tablet, a BlackBerry, mobile phone, whatever you're doing, pen and paper, and then you have to go and put that into Word afterwards. You have to download the pictures, and you have to do something else. And all that time is a lot of effort and money spent on it. But at the essence of it, it then goes into a system you can't access afterwards. So you're losing money on this. So I think it's down to that. Information strategy is going to be a critical part for businesses that want to move forward, understand what you've got, where you wish to go, and what are the steps to kind of get there. And I think that's going to be more the important part. And the technology is nearly irrelevant at that point. What the solution is, it's understanding what you want to do is the more critical part, and not get distracted by all the shiny things.
Indeed, and I suppose it is interesting, isn't it, that as you say, that the kind of technology almost gets sidelined, and the important piece is the sort of the governance, the understanding of the data that you're managing and holding and sharing, and thus the legal implications. I mean, are there any other legal kind of pitfalls that the industry should be thinking about now? I mean, you've mentioned quite a few, but any other things where you think that actually there's this legal risk from the pure governance issue, not actually the bits and bytes?
I think this is going to be the really interesting point, I think, kind of going forward and understanding that. And as we get to the BSA and data portability and so on, and typically in a contract, if you think about any kind of standard one where the client will have IP rights on that information. So then does that mean that myself as a subcontractor cannot use that information again in other projects? And what is that IP? And it's quite wide ranging of things. So we're kind of stagnating growth and sharing within projects and stuff. And I think people kind of tie themselves up into the legal part of it. But at the very essence, if I'm doing work for RICS or something, as doing some minor kind of repair works, whatever I'm doing, I own my data because I've done the report. I'm the expert in plumbing, whatever else it is. And you guys have a right to have that information as well. So there has to be a data portability part. And in SymTerra, we have set this up as a core essence of what we do, is that you have a client organization, you can add subcontractors to your job. And typically in other systems, you just give them user rights to access the system, and then when they're finished, you cut them off and they've got no access to it. But then what I will do then is I will do a report in your system, and then I will then, in the evening, I'll do another Word document in my company, whatever I'm doing it for, using Word or another system. So we've got duplication of information, we've got double handling of information, we've got a very manual process within things, and that's creating more paperwork effectively and more admin for something that should be quite simple. And what we've done with SymTerra is that each party is a client of SymTerra's. So you will invite a number of companies to your project. Those companies own the right to their data in SymTerra, and you own the right to the information on your project. It's the same document, it's the same photograph, but both parties will own the rights to the same information. And I think from our side, that's a very exciting change, and it's been quite complex for us to go off and implement, but we think it's critical to understand that we're not going to move forward to become more data-centric as an industry. We're not going to be able to go off and move forward for digital adoption unless we have that data sharing, unless we have that idea that everybody's entitled to the information that they have contributed to a project. From a security point of view, you can also segregate contractors out and so on and protect that information. There is also, we're not entering into the realms of GDPR or other bits and pieces. This is purely, I'm building a wall, I've built a wall, here's the evidence behind it kind of thing. We do stay out of the HR stuff. It is very much a focus on the construction, the built environment is where our interests lie, nothing else. And I think as we start moving these things forward, we'll see it. Now, when you look back on projects that I've worked on, in Crossrail, for instance, we had BIM models 10, 12 years ago. This is from 20 different design houses, across the world feeding into these models to go off and give us one integrated model that we could then do clash detection on, analysis, get sign off, and so on. We've already been working in this kind of space, but each of those models, where are they now? It's probably going to be impossible to find. And it hasn't moved on, it hasn't been allowed to be shared because each project was treated as its own individual entity with its own cost code. And therefore, that data then got segmented out to the side. We need to bring it into a centralized environment that, as Crossrail, for instance, moved through its kind of delivery, you can go off and have that information, still get access to the archaeological surveys from 20 years ago, the borehole data that we had with water table levels. They should all be there. We should be able to go off and use this throughout the length of it. And now that Crossrail is entering into, or Elizabeth Line now, is entering into operation phase, that information, the decisions of, can then help us with future works going forward. And we got very, very lucky on this on London Overground, where the team that built the original kind of overground came back, a lot of us, and did the 5-car extension. So when we came back, we had the wealth of knowledge of why we made decisions a number of years previously. And we were able to go, okay, if we're doing a platform extension for the 5-car train, an extra carriage on the train, we knew where we could go. We knew which direction. We knew the options. We were able to cost that up because we had something in the original commercial team. That was fantastic. And that data portability was effectively a bunch of people with information in their heads and memory sticks at home. But we need to go off and make that a lot more kind of open and stuff. And people need to accept that for us to all comply with the BSA, it needs to be data ownership, democratizing access to information, and having a bit more openness within it is going to be critical for everyone to succeed.
Indeed, and I think that's a great point to finish on, because I think there's this sense now that when you're building an asset of any kind, you are in parallel building a data asset that should have the same longevity as the design life and beyond of the asset itself. You need that manual effectively that says, how is it built, how are we going to operate it for as long as the asset exists. And as you say, that sort of data portability is not just technical formats, it's the governance, this sense of shared ownership depending on the context. So, well, it's been a fascinating conversation, John, and I look forward to catching up again in the future. But for today, thanks ever so much for your time, and speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me.